They're names we all know, figures we've practically put on pedestals, idolized even. But what if those shining statues have some serious cracks? What if the heroes from our history lessons were, well, a lot more flawed, maybe even more disturbing than we were ever taught? Get ready to rethink some things. History, or at least the way it's usually told, often feels like a straightforward story of heroes and villains, big wins and tragic losses. But the truth? It's hardly ever that simple. So many of the world's most celebrated figures, the men and women who shaped our cultures and the world we live in, had some pretty dark secrets. They did shocking things, held beliefs that really make you rethink their legacies. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 7 of these famous figures to take a balanced, but brace yourselves, shockingly revealing look at the hidden truths history often likes to sweep under the rug. Celebrated for his supposed discovery of the Americas in 1492, Christopher Columbus is often credited with altering the course of history. But behind the heroic tales lies a much darker reality. Columbus's voyages led to the exploitation and decimation of indigenous populations. He and his men enslaved native peoples, imposed brutal punishments, and were responsible for widespread violence. According to primary accounts, including those by Bartolomé de las Casas, even some of his contemporaries were horrified by his cruelty. His governance in Hispaniola was so brutal that he was eventually arrested and returned to Spain in chains. J. Edgar Hoover transformed the FBI into one of the most powerful institutions in American law enforcement, setting the foundation for modern investigative practices. Under his leadership, the FBI became a symbol of national security, crime-fighting efficiency, and technological innovation. However, Hoover also leveraged this immense power to surveil, manipulate, and intimidate those he deemed threats to his vision of America. He maintained extensive secret files on numerous politicians, activists, and celebrities, records often used as political leverage to protect his position or undermine opponents. These secretive practices cast a shadow over his otherwise significant contributions to federal law enforcement. One of the most disturbing examples of Hoover's overreach was his relentless campaign against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whom he viewed as a subversive threat. Under the infamous COINTELPRO program, Hoover's FBI bugged King's phones, tracked his movements, and monitored his associates, all in an effort to discredit him. Taking it even further, the FBI sent King an anonymous letter, laced with threats and innuendo, suggesting he should commit suicide to avoid public disgrace. A chilling example of the abuse of government resources for personal vendettas. These tactics, now widely condemned, illustrate how far Hoover was willing to go to suppress dissent and maintain control. Despite his public dominance, Hoover was famously private about his own life, keeping his personal affairs shrouded in secrecy while violating the privacy of thousands of individuals. Ironically, the man who built the FBI's reputation for integrity and order operated with methods that were often ethically questionable and legally dubious. Though Hoover is credited with shaping the FBI into a formidable force, his tactics and motivations have left a legacy that continues to spark debate about the balance of power, accountability, and the ethical limits of government surveillance. Richard Nixon's presidency was a complex combination of significant achievements and infamous controversies. On one hand, he scored big foreign policy wins, such as opening diplomatic relations with China and playing a role in easing Cold War tensions through détente. Domestically, he introduced some notable programs, including environmental reforms and the creation of the EPA. And yet, his presidency is forever overshadowed by one word: Watergate. This wasn't just a clumsy break-in at the Democratic National Committee. It was the tip of the iceberg in a jaw-dropping saga of political espionage, sabotage, and a cover-up so big it stretched all the way to the Oval Office. The Watergate scandal unmasked a presidency fueled by paranoia, riddled with illegal antics, and wielding power like a kid who found the cookie jar. As the investigation unfolded, it revealed a level of corruption that stunned the nation, ultimately forcing Nixon to become the first and only U.S. president to resign from office. The fallout shattered public trust in government and set a new, grim standard for political scandals, leaving a legacy that still shapes how Americans view political ethics and accountability today. Mahatma Gandhi. The name itself is synonymous with nonviolent resistance and peaceful protest. He's a global icon of peace and liberation, inspiring countless movements for justice and equality across the world. But if you take a closer look at his early years, particularly his time in South Africa, a more troubling picture begins to emerge, one that is often overlooked in the broader narrative of his life. During his years in South Africa, Gandhi's early writings and actions revealed discriminatory attitudes toward Black Africans. He voiced opinions and made statements that, by today's standards, would be considered deeply prejudiced. For instance, Gandhi campaigned for Indians to be socially distanced from the Black African population, arguing that Indians deserved a spot higher up the cultural ladder. He even campaigned against Indians being classified in the same category as native Black South Africans. While these views evolved over time, they complicate the image of Gandhi as a universal champion of equality and unity, forcing us to grapple with the complexities of historical figures and the context in which they lived. Pablo Picasso, a towering figure in 20th century art and arguably one of the most influential artists to ever pick up a paintbrush. He didn't just break the rules of art, he smashed them to pieces and rebuilt them in ways no one had imagined. Cubism, surrealism, you name it. Picasso's genius reshaped the entire art world. But here's the catch. The man himself was far less admirable than his work. His personal life was a whirlwind of chaotic relationships, marked by intense passion, but also by a staggering amount of emotional wreckage. Picasso had a notorious reputation for how he treated the women in his life. Wives, mistresses, muses, all of whom played a role in his art, yet endured emotional and often psychological suffering because of him. The man behind the masterpieces was, to put it bluntly, deeply flawed. Walt Disney, the creator of a magical realm, gifted generations with enchantment and brought countless beloved characters to life. His name is practically synonymous with wholesome family fun, and his legacy has shaped entertainment for nearly a century. But even fairy tales have their shadows, and Disney's story is no exception. Behind the sparkle and charm lies a more complex narrative. Accusations of anti-Semitism? Check. Early animations and personal connections that sparked controversy and raised more than a few eyebrows? Absolutely. And let's not forget his cameo in the Red Scare era, where he served as an informant for the House Un-American Activities Committee, naming names like it was part of a scriptwriter's dream. Add to that whispers of discriminatory practices at his studios, disputes with union workers, and a reputation that wasn't always as pristine as his characters. And suddenly the picture-perfect entertainer isn't so squeaky clean. It seems that even in the happiest place on earth, things can get a little complicated. John F. Kennedy's presidency, often romanticized as the fairy tale era of Camelot, radiated youthful energy, intelligence, and sky-high ideals. He wasn't just a leader, he was a beacon of inspiration for an entire nation. But as alluring as the public image was, JFK's private life was a tangled web of secrets. Behind the charm and polished smile lay a man whose personal affairs, literally affairs, were the stuff of legend. Rumors of numerous extramarital escapades, including alleged liaisons with iconic figures like Marilyn Monroe, were carefully swept under the rug during his lifetime. Talk about a real-life soap opera playing out in the White House. For some, these personal scandals might not overshadow his policy achievements, but they certainly throw a wrench in the picture-perfect narrative of the devoted family man and idealistic leader. JFK wasn't just a man of contradictions. He was a human Rorschach test, leaving behind a legacy as complicated as it was captivating. Camelot, it seems, had its fair share of cracks beneath the glittering surface. Christopher Columbus, J. Edgar Hoover, Richard Nixon, Mahatma Gandhi, Pablo Picasso, Walt Disney, and John F. Kennedy. These 7 individuals, famous for all sorts of different reasons, all show us one thing pretty clearly. History is rarely just black and white. You can't deny their achievements, but you also can't ignore the darker parts of their lives and actions. When we acknowledge these hidden truths, it's not about tearing them down. Instead, it's about getting a fuller, more honest, and frankly, more human picture of the past and the incredibly complex people who made it what it was. The stories we tell about our heroes really matter, and sometimes the whole story is way more revealing than the legend. So, what do you think? Does learning about these dark secrets change how you see these historical figures? Are there any other icons whose hidden histories you think we should explore? Tell us all about it in the comments. If this video made you think, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more explorations into the complexities of history, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Thanks for watching.